It was late autumn when I first drove down the winding gravel road that led to the land I had just purchased. The trees, tall and proud, swayed gently in the cool breeze, their golden leaves scattered across the path like nature's own carpet. For me, this wasn't just a plot of land. It was a promise, a second chance, a new beginning after years of living within the rigid, suffocating confines of suburban neighborhoods and their ever-watchful HOAs. I had spent my life in carefully trimmed yards, listening to endless debates about mailbox paint colors and lawn lengths. My evenings filled with board meetings where people argued over whether a neighbor's shutters matched the neighborhood's approved palette. For too long, I'd felt trapped by rules that seemed to strip away the very individuality that made life rich. When my wife, Margaret, passed away, something inside me broke free. She had always dreamed of owning a piece of wild land, somewhere untouched, where we could breathe. I couldn't give that to her while she was alive, but now I could honor her by living the dream for the both of us. So, when the opportunity came to buy several acres of forest on the outskirts of a small town, I didn't hesitate. It was old land, part of a family estate that had been split and sold off. Most buyers looked past it, thinking it too remote, too wild, too difficult to manage. To me, it was perfect. The first few weeks were peaceful beyond measure. I set up a modest cabin, nothing fancy, just enough to keep me warm and dry. I woke each morning to birdsong instead of traffic, to the smell of pine instead of asphalt. I spent my days clearing walking trails, stacking firewood, and simply listening to the whispers of the forest. For the first time in decades, I felt at home. But peace, as I would soon learn, never lasts long when a certain kind of neighbor is nearby. It was a Saturday morning when I met her, the woman who would come to embody everything I had tried to leave behind. Her name, as I later learned, was Karen. She appeared at the edge of my property line, arms folded tightly across her chest, lips pursed as though she'd swallowed a lemon. Behind her stood two other residents of the neighborhood down the road, both wearing the smug expressions of people convinced they were right before the conversation had even begun. "Excuse me," she called out, not with politeness, but with the sharp tone of someone used to commanding obedience. "Are you the new owner of this land?" I set down my axe and wiped my brow. "That'd be me. Name's Richard. And you are?" Her eyes narrowed. "I'm the president of the Pine Hollow Homeowners Association. We oversee all the properties in this area." I raised an eyebrow, already sensing where this was going. "Well, I'm not part of Pine Hollow. This land was never in your HOA. It's private property." She scoffed. "Be that as it may, your activities affect the community. We have certain standards here: noise levels, property appearance, even the types of structures permitted. We'll need to review your cabin plans and approve them." I couldn't help but laugh, though I tried to keep it lighthearted. "Ma'am, I didn't build this cabin for your approval. This is my land. I'm not in your HOA, and I won't be attending any of your board meetings." Her face flushed red, and the two men behind her shifted uncomfortably. "You can't just do whatever you want out here," she snapped. "There are rules. Rules you made for your neighborhood," I said evenly. "Not for mine. This forest is mine, and I intend to keep it that way." That was the start of a battle I hadn't asked for, but one I would be forced to fight. Over the following weeks, Karen and her HOA warriors made their presence known. One day, I found a formal-looking letter nailed to a tree near my driveway, demanding that I remove a pile of firewood because it was unsightly. Another time, they called the county to complain that my cabin was unpermitted, though I had every legal document in order. Once, I even caught them walking through my land with measuring tapes, as though my forest trails were theirs to regulate. Each time I stood firm. I wasn't rude, but I was unyielding. I had learned long ago that some people, when given even a hint of control, would try to expand it until it consumed everything around them. If I gave Karen an inch, she would take a mile, and soon I'd be back in the same cage I had tried to escape. But here's the thing about battles like these. They're not just about property lines or legal documents. They're about values, about who we are when faced with those who try to dictate our lives. As the weeks turned into months, I realized this conflict was teaching me lessons I hadn't expected, lessons about patience, resilience, and the quiet strength it takes to stand alone. One crisp morning, I was sitting on the porch, sipping coffee, when I saw movement among the trees. It was Karen again, marching up the path with determination in her stride. This time, she carried a clipboard. "Good morning," I called out, though my tone carried more steel than warmth. She didn't return the greeting. "We've had several complaints about your property. The smoke from your fire pit drifts into the neighborhood, and some of the residents find it offensive. You'll need to discontinue using it immediately." I set my coffee down and leaned forward. "Karen, let me be very clear. This is my land. My fire pit is on my property, legally constructed and safely maintained. You don't have jurisdiction here." Her jaw tightened. "If you won't comply, we'll take further action." I stood then, walking down the steps until I was face to face with her. "Do what you think you need to do. But understand this. Every time you come onto my land, every complaint you file, every threat you make, it doesn't weaken me. It strengthens my resolve. This forest isn't just trees and dirt. It's freedom. It's the dream my wife and I shared. And I'll be damned if I let you, or anyone, take that from me." For a moment, something flickered in her eyes. Maybe it was surprise, maybe even respect, though it was quickly buried beneath her usual scowl. She turned sharply and stormed off, her clipboard clutched like a weapon. That night, as the fire crackled and the stars stretched endlessly above me, I thought about Margaret. I thought about the years we had spent living under rules that made no sense, rules that stole little joys from us one by one. I thought about how she had always wanted to hear the owls at night, to walk barefoot through the moss, to plant wildflowers without asking permission from a committee. She was gone, but in a way, she was here with me. Every time I stood my ground, I honored her memory. The weeks after that encounter with Karen took on a strange rhythm. Life in the forest was still beautiful, still filled with quiet mornings and the rustling of deer through the underbrush. But there was a tension that hadn't been there before. I could feel the eyes of the HOA on me, even when they weren't physically present. Sometimes I'd catch headlights creeping past the entrance to my driveway late at night. Other times, I'd notice footprints along the edge of my trails, where no neighbor had any right to be. At first, I tried to brush it off. People like Karen thrived on attention. If I gave her too much of mine, it would only feed the fire. So I stuck to my routine. I built new birdhouses, split more wood, and taught myself to identify the wild mushrooms growing in the damp corners of the forest. I was happy, in my own stubborn way, to live as if she weren't looming nearby. But Karen wasn't the type to fade into the background. She wanted control, and when she couldn't get it directly, she found other ways to press her weight onto me. One evening, I received a knock on my door. It was the county inspector, a young man with kind eyes and a nervous tone. He explained, almost apologetically, that there had been multiple complaints filed about my illegal structures and environmental violations. I showed him my permits, all in perfect order. He nodded, embarrassed, and muttered, "Honestly, sir, I think you're fine. Some folks just don't like seeing someone live outside their little system." As he left, I stood at the door watching his car fade into the darkness. That was when I realized this wasn't just a personal squabble anymore. This was about principle. If Karen could harass me with endless complaints, she could do it to anyone. I thought about the younger families moving into the area, the retirees just trying to enjoy their golden years, and I knew that if someone didn't stand up to people like her, those folks might never find the peace they were searching for. The next morning, I made a decision. Instead of waiting for Karen to strike again, I'd take the initiative. I drove into town and spent the better part of a day at the courthouse and county records office. The clerks were helpful, especially after hearing a few stories of Karen's antics. One of them even chuckled and said, "She's been pulling this for years. You're not the first, but you might be the most stubborn." By the end of the day, I had a thick folder of documents proving, beyond any doubt, that my land was separate from Pine Hollow, HOA jurisdiction. Boundaries were clearly mapped. Rights were spelled out in black and white. I wasn't just guessing anymore. I had the law firmly in my corner. That evening, I stacked the folder on my table, lit the lantern, and poured myself a glass of whiskey. For the first time since buying the land, I felt truly secure. But security didn't mean the battle was over. 2 days later, I found Karen parked at the entrance to my driveway. She was standing outside her SUV, speaking animatedly to two other board members. As I approached, I could see the frustration on her face, the kind of tight-lipped fury that comes from losing ground. "Afternoon," I said, stepping up calmly. "Can I help you folks?" Karen thrust a piece of paper toward me. "This is a notice of noncompliance. You're in violation of community standards regarding exterior structures, and unless you make the necessary changes, you'll be fined." I took the paper, skimmed it, and then laughed. "Karen, you know what this paper is worth." I held it up to the sunlight. "Not even enough to start a fire." Her face turned crimson. "You can't ignore this." "I can, and I will," I said firmly. "Because this," I tapped the folder I had brought with me, "proves once and for all that my land is not, and never will be, under your HOA's control. I've filed it with the county, and if you keep harassing me, you'll be the one facing legal trouble." For a moment, the air hung heavy between us. The two men behind her looked uneasy, glancing at one another as though questioning whether they had backed the right leader. Karen, though, couldn't back down. "You're destroying the harmony of this community," she spat. "People move here for order, for peace. You're a disruption." I stepped closer, my voice low but steady. "Karen, let me tell you something about peace. Peace isn't about everyone living under the same rules, wearing the same colors, mowing the same lawns. Peace is about respecting each other's freedom to live differently. You want uniformity. I want freedom. And that's the difference between us." Her eyes narrowed, but she didn't respond. She simply turned on her heel, muttering something under her breath as she marched back to her car. That night, as I sat by the fire with the forest alive around me, I thought about what I had said. It wasn't just a clever comeback. It was the truth. Too many people confuse control with peace, rules with community. But real community was about neighbors helping neighbors, about people living side by side without trying to crush each other's individuality. I knew Karen wasn't finished. People like her rarely quit. But I also knew something else. I was no longer afraid. Over the next few months, small victories came my way. The county dismissed every complaint filed against me. A few of the Pine Hollow residents even stopped by, quietly, to shake my hand and thank me for standing up to the HOA. One man, a veteran named Bill, told me he'd been fined for planting a flagpole in his yard that wasn't the approved height. Another woman confessed she'd been written up for hanging laundry outside. Each story made me more certain that I was doing the right thing. I hadn't set out to be some sort of example, but life has a way of pushing us into roles we never expected. My role was simple: to stand firm, so others might find the courage to do the same. Still, Karen didn't disappear. She showed up occasionally, usually with another complaint or some veiled threat. Each time, I met her with calm defiance. Over time, though, I began to notice something unexpected. Her persistence wasn't just about control. It was about fear. One afternoon, after yet another fruitless confrontation, I caught her lingering longer than usual near the property line. Her eyes wandered over the forest, the trails, the cabin. And for just a moment, her face softened. "You really think this is better, don't you?" she asked quietly. I nodded. "I don't just think it. I know it. Out here, I can breathe. Out here, life isn't measured by rules and fines. It's measured by moments. The sound of an owl at dusk. The smell of pine after rain. The kind of things you can't legislate." She didn't answer. She just turned and walked away, slower than usual. And in that moment, I saw not an enemy, but a person trapped in a system she had convinced herself was necessary. Maybe she even envied me. I'll never know for sure. But what I do know is this: the forest had given me more than freedom. It had given me perspective. It had taught me that standing up for yourself doesn't always mean shouting the loudest. It means holding steady, even when others push. And as winter settled in, with snow blanketing the trails and the cabin warm with firelight, I felt a peace deeper than anything I had known before. Not the fragile peace of conformity, but the strong, enduring peace of living true to oneself. The first snow of that winter came heavy and sudden, the kind of storm that silences the whole world under a blanket of white. I woke to find my cabin nearly buried, the path to the woodpile, lost beneath drifts taller than my knees. It was the kind of morning Margaret would have loved. She always said the forest looked like a Christmas card when it snowed. I lit a fire, brewed a pot of coffee, and stood at the window, watching the sun rise slow and orange behind the frosted branches. But peace, as ever, was short-lived. Around midday, I heard the crunch of tires on snow. A vehicle labored up the hill toward my driveway, the engine straining. I pulled on my coat and stepped outside, and there it was, Karen's SUV, skidding slightly as it rounded the bend. At first, I sighed, bracing myself for another pointless confrontation. But then I noticed something unusual. She wasn't alone. In the back seat, a small boy sat wide-eyed, his little hands pressed against the window. When she stopped and got out, she didn't carry her usual clipboard or stack of papers. She looked exhausted. Her eyes were ringed with fatigue, her voice softer than I'd ever heard it. "Richard," she began, "I need help. That wasn't what I expected. What's wrong?" She glanced back at the boy. "This is my grandson. His parents are overseas. He's staying with me for a while, and, well, the power's out of my house. The roads are worse than I thought. We tried to drive to town, but we got stuck back there," and she hesitated. I didn't know where else to go. For a moment, I just stood there, taking it in. The woman who had spent months making my life miserable was now standing on my porch, asking for shelter. It would have been easy to turn her away, to let her taste the bitter medicine she'd been forcing on others. But as I looked at the boy's frightened face, I heard Margaret's voice in the back of my mind. Compassion is the only thing worth carrying when the world turns cold. I opened the door wide. "Come inside. Both of you." Karen hesitated, pride warring with need, but the boy tugged at her coat. She relented, and soon the three of us were seated by the fire. I gave the boy a mug of hot cocoa, and he smiled shyly as the warmth returned to his cheeks. Karen sat stiffly in the chair, her eyes wandering around the cabin. "It's cozy," she admitted quietly, as though the word itself pained her. "Simple," I replied. "That's all I ever wanted." For a long while, we sat in silence, listening to the fire crackle. The boy dozed off, curled up with a blanket. Finally, Karen spoke. When I moved into Pine Hollow, I thought the HOA was the answer. I'd lived through chaos, messy neighborhoods, noise, broken-down houses. I thought rules meant safety, that if everything looked perfect, life would be perfect. But it doesn't work like that, does it? I shook my head. Order isn't the same as peace. Sometimes the mess is what makes life beautiful. Her eyes flickered to the boy. He lost his parents to service. I want him to grow up safe, without worry. Maybe I tried too hard to control everything, because I couldn't control the things that really mattered. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I let her words settle between us. For the first time, I saw her not as an enemy, but as a person, flawed, frightened, trying in her own way to protect what she loved. The storm raged through the night, but in that cabin, something shifted. We shared a meal of stew I'd cooked on the stove. She told me stories about her late husband, about the years she spent raising her children. I told her about Margaret, about why I had bought this land, about how the forest was the dream we never got to share together. By the time the storm eased and the stars reappeared in the sky, the lines between us had softened. The next morning, I helped dig her SUV free, and we parted with something I never thought possible between us: mutual respect. Karen didn't stop being Karen overnight. She still ran her HOA, still loved her rules, but she stopped harassing me. More than that, she left me be. Occasionally, I'd see her walking with her grandson near the edge of the forest, and we'd exchange a polite wave. Once, she even asked if he could join me on a short hike through my trails. I agreed, and the boys' laughter echoed through the trees like music. Over time, word spread through Pine Hollow that I wasn't the enemy, just a man who wanted to live differently. A few neighbors began visiting, curious about the land, eager to see what life looked like outside the confines of the HOA. Some came for advice, others just to walk in the woods for a while. My forest became more than my refuge. It became a reminder that freedom and community can coexist if people learn to respect one another. I never forgot the lesson of that stormy night. Sometimes, the people who fight you hardest are the ones carrying the heaviest burdens. And sometimes, the greatest act of strength isn't standing your ground. It's opening your door. Years later, when I look back on those days, I don't remember the petty arguments, the complaints, the endless paperwork. What I remember is the laughter of a child chasing fireflies in the forest. I remember Karen sitting quietly by my fire, her guard lowered for the first time. I remember the peace I finally found when I stopped running from conflict and started living with purpose. Margaret never got to walk these trails with me, but in a way, she was here all along. In the whisper of the pines, in the glow of the fire, in every choice I made to honor freedom, kindness, and the wild beauty of life. And when people ask me now what it means to own land, I tell them this. It isn't about fences or titles or even the fight to keep others off it. It's about what the land gives you in return. The lessons, the perspective, the chance to live fully and freely. This forest is mine, yes. But more than that, it's home. A home built not by walls or rules, but by resilience, compassion, and the simple, enduring truth that peace belongs to those who dare to live it.